everybody, welcome to the Ronline Report. Today's guest just turned professional at the 2021 NPC Nationals. He's been very, very close a few times, and now he's got that IFBB Pro League Pro card. Please welcome from Manchester, New Hampshire, Nasty Nate Spear. What's up, Nate?
What's going on, Ron? Appreciate you having me on. Very successful weekend, and couldn't be happier to be on with you. Thanks.
Yeah, congratulations. Like I said, we just went over it. We just went over your placings right before we talked, because you've been so close now a few times. And I thought you'd been competing a lot longer because you were at the national level pretty much right away. That's how good you are. So I'm going to run down the stats as we just discussed so people can get an idea. 2016 was your very first year competing in the NPC, correct?
Yep, exactly.
So not many people do this right out of the gate. You won the New England heavyweight class. You won the Junior USA heavyweight class, a national title, which unfortunately, the only show that's not pro qualified for bodybuilding are the two junior shows, Junior USA Nationals. They are qualifiers for every other single damn division. Anyway, don't get me started. So 2017, you took off because you went to nationals, didn't do so well the first time. I wouldn't expect you to that quickly.
Yeah.
2018, you come back strong, seventh place in the supers at the USA. And that was it for 2018, right?
Yep. 2019,
just barely missed it. Second place super heavyweights at the North American to Cade Zook. That was 2019. 2019, you were also third at the Nationals. So wow, you've never been a slouch, man. You're never one of those third call out guys. 2020 was a great year at that North American. Some guy named Nick Walker won the supers. Jeff T. Sharonfont called himself Big Bad Bundy was second, and you were third behind them. 2020 Nationals, third again behind Jeff T., who turned pro, and Brent Swanson, good dude. And 2019 Nationals, you were also third. And here we are, new pro. So man, congratulations. I was going to say it's a long, hard road, but yeah, 5 years it's a long time in bodybuilding. That's like, dog years.
Well, I did cram in a lot of shows in like a small amount of window, I think, because so when I did North Americans, I was second. So I was like, man, I got to keep going, right? So that's why I did nationals, and that was a long stretch, 12 weeks in between. And then the previous year when Nick did it, I was third. So I was like, well, I got to keep going again. So, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where there's a couple of shows. I did some years, a few shows in 1 year, where some people just do the one show or the one qualifier and one national level show, where I sort of did a few national level shows. So it seems like maybe my career was longer than, it was, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, you did so well, you did so much in such a short time, and you did so well. I think that's where we get that idea that you're one of those guys that's been knocking on the door for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, I don't know much about you. I've always known of you because you're up. We call New Hampshire, Massachusetts adjacent, of course.
Yeah.
And you're basically in Massachusetts. You're in Manchester, which is it's about a 20-minute drive from the border.
Yeah, when you're in New Hampshire, you pretty much tell people you're from Boston. It's one of those things. Yeah, I'm from Boston, but you're really not.
I tell people that are like in Lowell or Seabrook, I say you're in New Hampshire. Stop trying to.
Yeah.
Actually, Seabrook is New Hampshire. I'm thinking about Salisbury. All right, too much geography for these non-New Englanders. But so it's time I found out about you. How did you get into this bodybuilding thing that we do?
Yeah, so I actually have like a pretty cool story. So I actually did get a little bit of a late start. Started lifting in general at 27. I was actually in recovery for drug addiction, specifically heroin addiction, which, as we know, in Massachusetts, New England area, hit us very hard. So I just sort of finally learned how to get sober, I guess, after numerous tries, and was in a great recovery program. And they started bringing us to like the YMCA and whatnot, and just started lifting weights, and felt really good, and was really huge in my recovery from addiction. And I started, I was going with other guys to the gym, and I just excelled very quickly, and sort of realized like this, I might be on something here genetically. I bench pressed 315 pretty quick, had a strong bench, and, I was growing pretty quick naturally. And other guys were saying like, hey, are you taking stuff, that whole thing. And I'm like, no, I'm not, like, so, and then it slowly trickled into people saying, hey, like, you ever think about doing a bodybuilding show? Or, sort of coming up to me like more intriguing as my, physique progressed and stuff like that. So it's bodybuilding. That's why it's been so close to my heart. It's been a huge impact in my life as far as what it's done to change my just overall life in general, and how, happy and successful I've become in life a lot because of the tools of bodybuilding and, sort of what it teaches us to sort of, be disciplined and consistent and, day in and day out, like sort of working hard. I think that's bodybuilding's taught me a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to bore you or everyone else, but I do know firsthand from my own family. We had seven of us, seven brothers and sisters originally. So the two oldest were both sisters. Both of them were heroin addicts. One of them never got clean. She was on methadone. She was supposed to get a liver transplant. And my brother was ready to give it to her. They were a match, but she never, you were supposed to wean down to a certain dose of methadone, and she never did that. So she was 49. She passed away. The other sister she was an addict, but she was also into dealing. She went to prison and got clean in prison, and then went to nursing school. After that, totally turned her life around, became a nurse, and they had a party for her a couple of years ago. She was 30 years sober. So it's been a while. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like it touches a lot of people's lives, especially now these days. It's been so, rampant and stuff like that. So no matter who you talk to, someone sort of has an experience as far as like with being touched with addiction, you know what I mean? So that's sort of why I'm pretty open about it. I think it helps some people too to sort of, realize that there's stuff that can be achieved, outside of that, if you sort of do the right thing and get it on the straight and narrow.
Look at you. Physically, look at you. You went from, your body was probably in a horrible condition at some point during the addiction. Probably physically frail and weak and everything. And now, man, so you had no inkling before age 27 that you had any special gift for muscularity, nothing?
Well, it's actually a funny story. So my sister, she's my half sister, actually competed in bodybuilding. So she didn't, she was my half sister. So she was like 20 years older than me, and she lived in California. So I didn't really have a huge relationship with her, but she would come home for Christmas or the holidays. And when she'd come home, she was jacked. I mean, so this was they just had women's bodybuilding. Like she did USA's, she was pretty good.
Oh, wow.
Her name was Sharon Eckel.
Why do I know that name?
She was like pretty well. She was like pretty good competing back then. So someone might know her out there. That sort of, but she was from like Huntington Beach area. She moved out there when she was young to sort of pursue the bodybuilding career. It was funny because she would bring home, not like she dated, she had a couple different boyfriends through the span of like the time of me growing up, and she would come home with like some bodybuilders, as their boyfriends. And I'd be like, holy shit. So like I was infatuated with like, I always knew I liked, muscle, and I was like, man, it'd be cool to be like a jack dude someday. So that sort of definitely had a spark, and sort of there was always that inkling of this could be a possibility, because I know anyone that has any common sense, bodybuilding is obviously a lot of genetics. So, if my sister did it, like there might be some kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because like there's seven of us. The five older ones are half brothers and sisters. So do you know if it came from, it must be what we have in common with her, mother or father?
My dad, definitely.
Okay, so was your dad?
Yeah. He was actually always pretty jacked, had like big forearms, but he never worked out a day in his life. But he was like funny because he was like 5'3", actually, very short.
Wow.
But like stocky, he's a hard worker, like laboring kind of guy.
Yeah.
So he always had those like big sort of Jose hands, with the forearms. So I was like, oh man, if you actually, pursued it, you probably would have been pretty crazy, because you're just like, he was like that stocky sort of short guy. So
yeah, interesting. Wow, 5'3". I would never, I mean, you're 5'10". I always thought you were taller. I've been around you, and it seems, everyone, I'm 5'7.5". So I'm looking up at like everybody. I thought you were 6 foot or more. But now I just have to ask one more question about your sister. Was she out in the LA during the Huntington Beach during the 90s?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. That's when I lived out there. I lived there from 91 to 2000.
So I think when she did USA's, it was like 93, 94, maybe.
Oh, I was there. Yeah, we covered that. Yeah.
So I'll have to, sometime I'll send you this. I'll get some pictures from her or something. She has a couple cool ones back in the day. It's pretty crazy because you're like, just that everything was so different back then. And just, she had like the, the photo shoots with like the fluorescent, like, get up jumpsuits or whatever you want to say, aerobic suits or whatever.
Yeah. Hot skins, all that stuff was huge back then. Yeah. 93 USA. That was Chris Cormier won that year. That was back in that time. Bodybuilding was so popular. It was on television. It was on ESPN. And that I worked on the production company that put these things together.
Yep.
It was so popular. I think at one point we had a whole 1 hour special just for the men's USA and another one for the women's USA. And same thing with the Nationals and the Mr. and Ms. Olympia.
It was funny. I was actually, so during prep, I really get into like watching stuff. And I was watching actually Phil Hernon the year he won, the USA's was on ESPN or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I think one year Don Long, when he won, it was on ESPN when it was nationals, maybe in Texas or something. I can't remember, but yeah. So I really love watching that old, oh man, those 90s national shows were just like ridiculous with DeMayo and, oh man, those were good times. So I wasn't a part of, but I still look at it and like, man, like so cool.
Yeah. Now your sister never brought home DeMayo or Matarazzo, did she?
No,
You never know.
Unfortunately.
It's a small. This is a very small world we're in. You know that. Everybody knows everybody.
Definitely.
It's like I don't know you personally, but I know you're good friends with Jose. You're good friends with Matt Puglia.
Yep.
Probably a few other people. I mean, I see you training. I see like your pictures, and you've trained at the East Coast Muscle.
Yep.
Is it at the new location? It's at Hudson.
Yep. Hudson, yeah, yep.
Yeah. So, did you ever get down to any of the gyms down? Do you ever get down this way to train? You must train some places.
Yeah, I love General Fitness is actually a really good spot. And then I got to make it down to your gym. What is it, Bayshore?
Bayshore, yeah.
Yeah, that place looks huge, and everyone always tells me to go down there. And then I've been to in Western Massachusetts. They got Prime Oxford, the Green Gym.
Yeah,
they got a lot of cool pieces. So yeah, I think Massachusetts is underrated as far as gyms go. There's a lot of really good sort of gyms people don't realize that are pretty good. And then obviously when Greater Boston Fitness was still alive, that was awesome. Yeah. I'd go down there quite often. So
that was much closer for you. General Fitness must take you a good hour and a half.
Yeah, that's an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah. That's you know,
it's hard because most of those gyms are sort of a little bit of a hike. Like there's not really anything like north of Boston that's like pretty crazy. Because usually, I mean, I think you're like probably an hour and a half from Bayshore. I'm from Bayshore. I'm an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then the Western, like there's like that gym in Auburn, Western Mass.
Is it Impact Fitness is one
Impact.
Too? Yeah.
So those gyms are like an hour and 20 minutes, so it's not too bad. The Western Mass ones.
I mean, you must have people hitting you up now. Please come and train at our gym, please.
Not yet. Hopefully soon. But I did see there's a pretty cool gym that just opened up in where is it?
Now I gotta know.
Bellrica.
Oh, really? Oh, that's right. The
like Iron something,
Boston Iron. I should know the name of it. It was
pretty small, but it looks like it. They got some nice pieces there, and
I think it's called Iron Gym. I think it's called Iron Gym. Yeah, it's owned by she's I think a wellness pro from Brazil, and her husband.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Sorry to bore you guys out there, but Massachusetts, man, we love our state. You know, I can see you're an honorary Massachusetts resident as far as I'm concerned. So,
yeah, exactly.
Although you do have the best slogan on your license plates in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire's a good state to live in. I mean, definitely. But it's funny because sometimes when I'm on the road and sometimes people will ask me where I'm from, I'll just say Massachusetts because it's easier.
What's for you? I think wasn't Triple H from New Hampshire?
Yeah, Nashua. Yep.
China. What was her Joni? Joni Lara was from. Also, Adam Sandler, Sarah Silverman. There's a lot of people from New Hampshire. We can't talk. Yeah, the Granite State. But the license plate says "Live free or die." And no sales tax either. So all right, let's get back to bodybuilding. I'm sorry, everybody. I go off on tangents. So when you first started competing, how did you know how to diet, how to pose? Where did you get that education?
So luckily I got lucky and sort of found like a coach right off the bat that really sort of, fit what I was looking for. As far as, so he was Andrew Barry.
Yeah.
He's another New England guy out of Vermont. But it was just sort of a random thing. Like I was training at a gym. So I used to live up in northern New Hampshire, Lebanon, New Hampshire, which sucked. It was like nowhere in the middle of nowhere. And I was training with another guy up there, very few, decent looking bodybuilders up there. But he was like, hey, this is when I was first sort of getting into the bodybuilding thing. He's like, yeah, my brother-in-law, this guy, Andrew Barry, you know what I mean? Is like he coaches people. He's getting ready for the Cutler Classic. That was in 2015. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, so I went down to the Cutler Classic. That was the first time I seen like a real, NPC bodybuilding show. And I was like, oh my God, these guys are huge, and that's just getting started out. And I think Andrew won the supers that year. And, we went on to the Cheesecake Factory after and just chatted and, sort of picked his brain. And, we just had a really good connection, a similar sort of personality. And I could tell he's very educated and sort of had a lot of experience. And so we started in 2015 and he's sort of been my coach ever since. And it's, I've learned so much from him. And he worked with John Meadows for a long time and Dante Trudell, like when Dante was taking on people back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's good lineage there. And him and John were super, super close. He does a lot of stuff for John's site and he works with Granite and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool to sort of have that knowledge passed down, through him and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's a protege of John's, and he's still, when you go to mountaindogdiet.com, he's still, he's one of the coaches that you can click on and communicate with. So did you ever get to meet John himself? You must have at least met the guy.
No, I actually never got to meet John. So that was, I mean, we've had a couple messages, interactions and stuff like that, but I was always the type of person that's like hard for me to reach out to people because I don't want to be like I feel like they're already getting so many messages and I'm like, I don't want to bug this guy, you know what I mean, type thing. But I always watched his YouTube videos, and there's a lot of exercises I still use that, like the Bulgarian drop set of death or whatever. I'll still use that to this day. The Meadows rows. He has so many things that, sort of, it's like always sort of ingrained in you, right?
Yeah. So is that sort of your training style? Is it modeled after the way John and his clients train, or as you've developed something different?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty similar. So I like to do a lot of isolation stuff before heavy movements, which John preaches sort of for, safety and longevity. So if I do a bench press, I'll do like some kind of fly first to get warm, get activated, where some of the guys that are more focused on strength, they'll sort of get right to the heavy stuff. And I'm definitely more, I would say, of like a volume guy. I'm not huge on like progressive overload. Like, yeah, I try to get stronger, but at the same time, I think for me, it's there's a certain point of like where I don't really progress any longer and my body gets beat up, and I'd rather have a consistently fresh feeling body where I can keep training. I feel like I train a lot like Jose, actually, like really fast pace. My warm-up sets are sort of working sets too. So some guys with a progressive overload, I feel like they do like four reps, and then until they get like to that top set, right? And then they do a back off set, which is really popular right now.
Yeah.
Whereas my working sets will still be, or my warm-up sets will still be sort of like a working set. And I'll sort of do like higher rep stuff, 12 to 15 reps, chase a pump a little bit. It's always worked pretty well for me. And I've always been, knock on wood, I haven't had any injuries, and sort of always felt pretty healthy and fresh. I do think there's obviously a benefit of like getting stronger, obviously. So, that sort of just progressively naturally happens, I think, with my training, because obviously I'm not going to I think I just naturally get stronger as I continue my training. But it's not necessarily my main focus, whereas a lot of guys I feel like are really on the progressive overload train right now.
Yeah, because let's do the math. You've been training consistently for how long now? About 8 years?
8 years, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a long time. It's really not.
Yeah.
Talk to like Matt or Jose or
yeah.
I'm like 38 years in, but
Yeah.
You talk about the fact that you're not really trying to push crazy heavy weights means that these weights I see you do could be a lot higher if you really want them to. I got videos and pictures I've recently seen of you doing, and you might be stronger than this now. Military presses with 335 pounds with a barbell. Incline bar, that was for reps, not just like 1 or 2 reps. That was a set. Incline barbell, 405 for 8. You probably do more than that now. That was months ago. Squat, you handle 500 pretty damn well. Hack squat, I see 8 plates, 9 plates stacked on there. So you do train very heavy, but clearly it's still controlled, and you could train heavier if you were going to be a little more reckless, which, you're smart and you're not doing. So props to you.
Yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things, that when you say it like that, and statistic wise, it is, I guess, a lot of weight. So I wasn't really, sometimes I don't think about it like that, I guess, but
because you've trained with Matt Puglia, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, that's all. You're not even allowed to train with Matt unless you can do the minimum like 150s for dumbbells. That's like the first working set.
Yeah, he's got an indestructible body, man. He's pretty impressive.
It boggles my mind, Nate. It really does. It boggles my mind. So let's talk about this win, this Nationals, man. Nasty Nate. The condition was nasty. Would you? I've seen you a few times where the condition's been crazy. It looked to me like this was another level. Would you say it was?
Yeah. So we did actually stuff a lot different this time. So for me, actually, it's funny because my knock is that I'm usually like sort of flat because I chase conditioning. So I think, and this as good as anyone, it's hard to find that certain balance of, flat, full condition. So, usually 9 times out of 10, any competitor coming out of show is okay. Like you could have been fuller. Okay. You could have been leaner.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always about like finding that balance. So like the last few shows, I felt like my conditioning was like really, really good and super dry, but I was sort of lacking like a fullness. So this time, besides putting on more muscle, I think I made really good improvements this last off season, especially in my legs. So my legs got a lot bigger, and I think I just grew a little bit more. So that helped. But also this time we did something different. We kept my water in the whole time,
Oh,
whereas
wow.
usually in the past we would cut water. So we would cut water at like, 6 p.m., 5 p.m. or something like that, and just dry out overnight, and just sort of, get that really nice crispy look. But we were sort of doing like, as we were peaking through the week, we just realized like the look was really good. And it was like, why fuck with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were sort of like, okay, we're just going to keep the water in.
Hmm.
And we literally drank like about 6 liters of water Friday until I went to bed.
Huh.
And I mean, we used a small amount of diuretics just to keep the water flowing.
Yeah.
And then I woke up and had like half a liter of water in between each meals.
Hmm. Wow.
So I think that really helped. Actually, it presented a better conditioned look because I was actually fuller. So I felt really full, like bursting, but my conditioning was good enough where I could get away with it. So I think the problem is getting in that proper conditioning first,
Right.
and then you can sort of do that. So I think my conditioning was already really good at like 2-3 days out. So as we sort of started introducing carbs, it was like, okay, we're getting a little better, a little better. And then it was like, okay, like, why don't we just keep water in, which we usually don't do. So I was a little scared, honestly. I was like, I don't know, because
Yeah.
we've never done that before.
Nobody does. That's the thing is, it's Ian Valier did something similar last, I guess it'll be 2020 now, when he won, was it New York Pro? That
Yeah.
he kept water in for the first time and said, "Oh my God, why didn't I just do this all along?" Because everyone's terrified of drinking water, especially on show day. They think like one drop of water, they're going to blow their condition. When, are you going to do based on this, with what you and Andrew figured out for this prep, would you do that again? Would you probably repeat something similar with the water?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was great. And honestly, the day after the show, I've never felt better.
Hmm.
So sometimes, when you cut water so hard, like say you have some junk food the next day, and it's like you get that rebound effect, and it's like, oh man, I feel like garbage. So
Yeah.
that's always nice too. And obviously there's a benefit health wise too. I mean, on your kidneys and that kind of stuff, you're sort of keeping water, and that's obviously a better um, thing as that goes too. But I think it has really helped me be able to reach that fullness that I've sort of been looking for. I mean, you're always gonna have the critics that are gonna be like, oh, well, he wasn't as dry as he's been in this year or whatever. But honestly, I think this was the best combination of fullness with conditioning that I've brought ever. So I felt like, honestly, I mean, Carlos has a lot of size, but I felt like I was honestly like one of the biggest supers in there. And in the past, I feel like that's not my knock has always been like, is he a heavy or super? You know what I mean? Like, so I would always be like pretty well over the super weight cap, but I always felt like I sort of still looked like a heavy. Whereas this time I definitely looked like a super, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. And Carlos is tremendous, but condition wise, your condition was far superior to what Carlos was showing. I'm
yeah.
sure he'll get a handle on it as as his career goes on. But interesting that you posted that, was it on his or Instagram or yours, that you met him way back when he was a middleweight at the Nationals 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was like baby Carlos compared to, and you gave him some encouragement back then. You told him
Yeah.
how good he was going to be. And I doubt anybody else at that point was looking at Carlos and saying, dude, you're going to blow this show away. You're going to be a great pro someday. How did you know, looking at him back then?
Well, I remember I went to Easterns. He qualified for nationals, and that was, I believe, 2017. And he won the middleweight class, and I could just tell by like the roundness and like the bubbliness that he had, like, because you have a great eye too, and you've been around so long that sometimes even if they're not necessarily filled out and big, sometimes that like hanging sort of like 3D pop that you cannot sort of replicate through training or anything.
Right.
It's just sort of what you got. And some of these guys, they got it, and it's like, okay, if that guy puts on 20 or 30 more pounds, like he's going to be deadly,
Right.
and I think Carlos still had like really crazy wheels back then, but he was just in a middleweight form.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was one of those things where I was like, oh man, like, and I sort of slowly saw the progression, like, because I would see him at shows and I would be like, "Oh, dude, you look like freaking humongous," because you were a middleweight, and it's just a slow progression. And also his dad is really cool. I don't know if you ever met his dad.
Oh
But
yeah, of course, of
with him
course.
everywhere. And he's just like so encouraging, very nice guy. He's messaged me numerous times, and he's always been like sort of rooting for me. So it's pretty cool. Like, and not only just the New England area, like we talked about, but also like the tri-state. I feel like we sort of have some connection there with like Easterns and Atlantic. So I see a lot of those New York guys at some of these shows, and it's cool to sort of build that bond. And see how people progress over the years. And, people have said sort of the same thing about me, and like, oh, it's been awesome to sort of see you sort of transform and, take off. And it's that I actually like being in the Northeast, because I feel like we have so many different like little pockets and we're all sort of connected into like, because the same shows, like Steve puts on all these shows, and we sort of, whereas like some states, it's just like, they just have that one state and they're not connected with any other states because the state's so big or whatever,
Right. Yeah. Plus, some place like Florida, they got, I don't know, 30, 40 NPC shows a year.
Yeah.
We have 2 in Massachusetts. So we see each other every spring at the Cutler and every fall to New England. That's it. So, I'll give credit to Nick Trigilli, because he said in his coverage of the Nationals, I think he actually threw up a picture of you from 2016 to now. He goes, Nate's been knocking on the door, but he's been getting bigger and better every year. You would never even recognize him, 5 years ago when he started out in this. When was the first time you recall someone coming up to you and saying, dude, you are going to be so damn good, keep going?
Oh man. Honestly, it didn't really happen that often, I think. And I don't know. I just, because it's been a slow progression. It's not necessarily like so as someone like a Carlos or a Nick, where they put on randomly just like 20 pounds or 30 pounds in a year and sort of just morphed. I think it's just been a slow trickle effect, so I think, people have always sort of given me a lot of credit for, coming in really conditioned and consistent. So that's sort of always been, something that an accolade, I guess you could say, that some people have given me, but I don't necessarily, I feel like I might, and I don't say this like in a condescending way, but I feel like I sort of surprised some people, I guess, as far as like the progression, because I think some people maybe thought I maybe like peaked, you know what I mean? Like in the past. And I think a part of it is like, I don't have like anything that's like freaky or wow. It's just everything's sort of there. So sometimes when you have a guy that's like complete and they're not really missing much, it's not necessarily like a wow factor, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you got a guy with crazy arms or crazy legs, and it's like, oh, like you post a picture on Instagram and they're like, oh man, like they gets like, 5,000 likes or whatever. And sometimes, I'll post a picture of like a front double bicep. It's not like wacky, but it's like, okay, complete, not missing much. It flows well, but it's not going to get the necessarily wow factor. You know what I mean?
It's not ironic, because the whole goal of bodybuilding, competitive bodybuilding is supposed to be perfect balance, perfect proportion, symmetry. Everything's supposed to be proportionally developed in relation to everything else. And I do feel like sometimes, even in contests, sometimes you'll say, well, why didn't that guy? Well, nothing really stood out. Everything was kind of, that's, you're not supposed to have like freaky arms or freaky this and that. Something that's, nothing should be way better than everything else. That means you're out of proportion. So but I get it on social media. That's totally different, because people freak out over big arms, big legs, body parts, a back, because it's just pictures.
Well, especially you get some of those newer guys. It's funny because they see some of these guys and it's like the hype is just like crazy, like not to say that like Carlos or the guy like Justin Shire didn't deserve the hype, because obviously they won and they showed up on stage, but I think it was just sort of like overwhelming, almost like, oh my God, like the shock value was there. I mean, rightfully so in Carlos. I mean, the proportions on him are like crazy. So, but I mean, he did show up and he earned it at least, you know what I mean? There's some guys that, they might not necessarily translate to stage, but those guys definitely did. So props to them.
Yeah. I mean, and you're a good example of someone who does translate to stage, because we've all been to these shows where you follow someone on social media and then you see them on stage. You're like, is that the same guy? And then I look on my phone, I'm like, that's him. Doesn't look like him, but that's him. So I think it's better to, if somebody's doing it for the likes and the follows, and that's one thing. But if you're actually trying to win contests like you and turn professional and go on to have a good pro career, you don't want to be misleading people, because it's a big letdown. I think even the judges feed into that sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially condition. I've seen people that they look in their pictures like they're in your type of condition, but then I get to the show and I'm like, either they were never that lean in the first place, or they really messed up at some point in the last couple of days. Because that's
definitely.
So, but condition, I'll tell you, I respect conditioning a lot, because not that it doesn't take a lot of effort to get huge and round and bubbly, but some people do that regardless of how they train or how they eat. They're just meant to be, that's their genetic blueprint. There are not many people in this earth that are genetically shredded and can get that look without, very long, very tough diet. And I'm just curious, when I see someone like that, I have to know what kind of condition you stay in the off season, and like how much cardio do you need to do in prep to get to the condition that you do?
So I try to actually do the old school method, and I try to get as heavy as I can, honestly. So, but I do have a decent metabolism where it's like I get restricted at so much with like eating food. But like, I mean, my calories are up to like 5,500 calories this last off season. My body weight got up to 280. So I mean, I got pretty heavy. And I don't necessarily I never try to like restrict my body body fat percentage. I mean, if I genetically got fat, then I probably would, but I won't have to you know what I mean? I don't have to really watch it too much. I just try to eat as much as I can and try to grow. And then just when prep time's ready, it's like, okay, ready to go. And so this last prep, I did about 50 minutes of cardio fasted and then 30 minutes post workout.
50 and 30, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's 80. That's an hour and 20 minutes a day. Good Lord. That's a lot of cardio.
Yeah. And then my calories got as low as 100 grams of carbs. So I would do that pre-workout, 50 grams of carbs, and then post-workout 50 grams of carbs. So I mean, that's about as low as my calories get.
That's low. That's low.
And it definitely, I mean, it hurt. Like the 4 weeks to like 1 week out was pretty rough. I mean, my body was pretty banged up, and the aches and the pains and the feet feeling like 1,000 pounds, and taking the dogs out or going to the bathroom was a chore, or the process. So it's definitely there's a lot of mental aspect behind it, definitely. And I think luckily for me, I can use sort of like some of my past experiences to sort of make it for an easier sort of process, because I can sort of, I guess, when you've been through hard times, you know what I mean? It makes it a little bit easier to sort of cope with some of these moments where some people maybe have never been through like a difficult moment. So, the cardio and the low food and the hunger might be a little bit more of a challenge for them. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I'm in a way, I'm glad to hear you had to do that much cardio, because I have known people who barely did any cardio and they get pretty lean, but they're very, very rare people. Rare cases.
Well, I always hate when people are like sort of making posts like, if your coach makes you do an hour and a half or 2 hours of cardio, you should like, dude, like people have to get it has to be done sometimes, you know what I mean? And that's just sort of the way it is.
Yeah. Props to you for sticking with Andrew. I know even if he is a great coach, I know people who have had good coaches, but if they try to turn pro a couple times and it doesn't happen, for some reason they think, well, I got to try something different. Yeah. Even though if you're second or third place at the Nationals or USA, you're right there. It's not like, you weren't good enough. It's just there happened to be a couple other guys, a guy that on that day were better. How have you had, avoided the temptation of all these other people to jump ship and just say, oh no, I need a new coach. I need a new plan.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually had people reach out to me and being like, oh, I can do this and that for you and blah, blah, blah. And I've always been sort of like, I always try to pride myself on like sort of loyalty and integrity. And I don't want to be one of those sort of guys that, same thing with like a supplement contract or something. That's why I've never really, dove into anything yet, because I don't want to be that guy that is, signs with just some company and then next month they're with a different company saying that's the best product. And I sort of want to stand behind my name as like a brand of like integrity and, like loyalty. And so with, staying with someone like Andrew, and I always felt like too, it was cool because he wasn't some big guru and we had a lot of success together. And it's just, it was a little more special to me, you know what I mean? As far as like, if I got with someone that was like a big name coach and they just sort of turned me pro, I don't feel like there's like much of like an emotional connection there and a relationship. Whereas me and Andrew, I've trained with him, numerous times, and, he's gone to all my shows, and, the type of relationship and rapport that we've been able to build and has been like amazing. And today I consider my best friend. So it's been really like a blessing, sort of how I found him like right off the bat and got lucky in that regard. And I just always look at Andrew as like an underrated coach too. Like he has a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and does really good with all his like smaller level amateur guys. And I think that really says a lot, because with coaches these days, you get someone that they have a big name, and then this guy comes on the scene and they're using a local level coach, and he has the potential, and then he gets with like the big coach and he turns him pro, and then the praise goes to, oh my God, type thing. So it's almost like necessarily like I look at the guys who have been working with the same kind of guys at like 5-6 years, and sort of made sort of crappy genetics out of like like a good decent like local competitor, because that usually says a lot more to me about than taking a genetic freak and sort of getting them that card. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it about a few guys. Said this guy's genetics so good, my dog could have prepped him and turned him pro. So, but speaking of turning pro, I've seen guys over the years who they turn pro very, very quickly. Like sometimes, I think even like Seth Ferrocci, and there's been a couple times where it was like their second show. They just did one show to qualify, and then they went to national, and boom, it happened so fast for them. And I don't think in a situation like that, they really get to appreciate, what it takes to get there, the whole process. Whereas someone like yourself, where you did a, I don't know how many national shows, about almost 10, right? I mean, you came close so many times. Do you think that gives you a deeper level of appreciation, satisfaction for getting that pro card, because you have come close to it and you were denied it a few times?
Yeah, definitely. Because I just remember those moments where I was waiting, for my name to be called a couple of times, where I thought I was going to get, maybe like last year, I did think I was going to get the second place card over Brent Swanson, which he looked great. So I wasn't necessarily saying that, but I did beat him the year before. So in my head, I was like, okay. And we were sort of like, right in the center. So it was one of those things where it was like the chance was pretty close. So when I heard my name, so that sort of resonates with me as I turned pro this year. And same thing with like 2019, I thought I was really close with Ben, just because my condition was like really immaculate that year. And I thought, Ben has great shape and structure, but I don't necessarily think he was like as conditioned. So it was one of those things where it was like apples and oranges. So it was like so close. So, those moments of hearing my name, get called and missing by one placing to turn pro, it's sort of like that. Those are the moments that when, this weekend sort of look back on and sort of think about, and you're like, oh, wow, like it's crazy. And I've actually talked about before, like turning pro so quick, like, yeah, like I've sort of thought about like, okay, like, so let's say I turned pro at North Americans when I got second place in 2019. I still would have had a very long road ahead of me, to build a pro physique. And I still wouldn't have I would have had to take a really long off season. Whereas now I feel like, I've still progressed, I've still gotten better. And now my size is like a little bit closer to like a pro level size. Not quite there, obviously, yeah, but compared to say 2019, where I was 230 on stage, you know what I mean? So, and my legs weren't quite as like big. So I feel like I filled out a lot more. And now it's like either way, now I'm a little bit closer to sort of that, look.
I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but some of these people that have turned pro quickly, we never hear from them again. Yeah. They might surface and do like one pro show and they get last call out, and then they say, screw this, I'm on. So I think everything happens for a reason. I think you were meant to turn pro now, and you're in a much better spot to stand on a pro stage, as you said, than you were before.
Honestly, too, I was thinking this at least last weekend it was pretty cool, because I think this was like one of the, a lot of people are praising it as one of the best nationals in a long time. Yeah, it was. And to be able to stand next to like Carlos, who obviously has like a crazy future, and I felt like I compared really well to him. So I think that really did a lot for sort of my name and sort of like, how I'm remembered, I guess. Whereas, one of those other years, it might've been like more easily forgotten. So I think, this was a really special weekend because, there's, I think 24 supers, which is really not common these days at the national level.
Not at all.
So, and then you had like 40 heavyweights and like 40 light heavyweights. So it was really cool to be a part of like a really, really good nationals. And I think, that helped me get a lot of attention and sort of praise, and it sort of definitely helped build my brand a little bit. Whereas previous years at White wasn't as, deep as competitive, and didn't really get as much spotlight, I guess.
No, absolutely. I mean, I could rattle off some of these names of national champions from the past 10 years. And I guarantee you a lot of people watching this will be like, who's that? I don't know who that is. So, and again, sometimes taking second place, especially to a really big name, like a Carlos is going to be a big name. I think it does more for you than maybe winning, especially like in a weaker year when say you'd won the supers and there was like 8 supers that year, and 4 of them were way overweight. Nobody would care. Nobody would remember.
Yeah.
So this leads me to ask, what is next? What is next for Nate Spear?
So actually, I think we're gonna jump into the Boston Pro Show.
Yes. Yes.
In 12 weeks.
Yes. Thank you.
It was only like, it only sort of made sense because, some people would obviously be like, oh, why so soon? Or I don't know, maybe they might think it's a smart move, but for my thought process is, one, obviously it's in my backyard, and, you got to have a Boston area person do it,
Yeah.
and then obviously like family and friends can go, and obviously cost expenses. There's no flight, and I can drive down there, so no hotel fees. So it makes it sort of an easy process. And then obviously, like, who knows if they'll ever have a Boston Pro Show again?
Exactly.
You never know. Or they might have like 212 next year. Who knows? But and then honestly too, I think it's good to jump right in, because I think, like you were saying, a lot of guys turn pro and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to wait a year, and then it becomes a 2 and then a 3. And then you're like, oh, this guy never did a pro show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty good to, and honestly, I'm already in shape. It's 12 weeks apart. So everything, all the stars sort of align as far as like doing it. It just sort of makes sense. And then, after that, I'll sort of, reassess and, get back to the drawing board as far as making improvements and really making, sort of turning my physique into like a pro level physique. But I think, I don't know. I mean, obviously I have thought about this quite extensively. So you got the Arnold Classic, obviously the week before.
Yeah.
So that could be, some deep waters, but I think it'll just be good to see my physique compared, and then sort of assess like how I can go from there and how I can get better. So I think it'll be a good experience overall. Obviously my expectations aren't super high, but like I said, those reasons I think are pretty good. So,
I mean, if you jumped into a pro show and you found some obscure show, I'm not going to bag on any states or anything, but say you found some show and you took 5th place, but there's only like 8 guys in it, and like the winner's nothing special. Nobody would care. I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
But, regardless of where you place at this Boston Pro, if by the grace of God, we get like Brandon Curry in there, William Bonac, who else is in that? Kuplo. Jeez, we got all kinds of people. I got ready. Oh yeah. Dude, Nathan. What if Nathan DeAsha does it? Brandao, Regan Grimes, Cedric. Oh my God, if we could get all these people in Boston, Samson Dauda, this would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that would be pretty exciting, man.
And like I said, if you're a pro and you're from Boston, unless you're in one of those couple divisions that they're not having, you better come and support and do that show, guys and girls. Come on.
Right.
Come on. Because like I said, we were supposed to have this thing in 2021. Didn't happen.
Well, and then they were only going to have a 212 portion, I think, right? Or were they?
I'm not sure what they're going to do. They were supposed to be at the Encore Casino one year. It's been a long time coming. And like you said, hopefully it'll be an annual thing. But you never, with shows, you never know. It could be a one.
Sometimes they have a one and done. So
yeah, you don't want to miss it. You say, oh, I'll do it in 2023. Well, maybe there won't be a 2023.
And like I said, it's one of those things. It's like, if it was like, in June or the fall, like, yeah, that might be different. But it's like, I'm already sort of in shape. I can rebound a little bit. It's funny because I've actually done a 12-week stretch twice already because of North Americans and Nationals.
Oh, okay.
So I sort of have that sort of in my, like how to sort of handle that. Because I think it is a different mental process, because it can be a little hard. That's like a long stretch. So I've already sort of done it. So it shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. I mean, do you let your weight go up just a little bit for a few weeks and then start coming down?
Yeah. So generally speaking, we'll like reverse diet a little bit, slowly introduce food, pull some supplements out, and sort of just get fresh again, but keep some kind of conditioning where like the glute lines are still a little bit in, lower back's still fairly tight. So probably get up, maybe 10 to 15 pounds and sort of keep that sort of composition. And then, around like 4 weeks out, sort of pull everything in and see what we can bring. And hopefully maybe bring some good improvements. You never know.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've seen people improve during prep. It used to be a myth that it couldn't be done, but I've seen it done enough now that I know it can be done. And so I think with your body type, I've seen people with your type of structure do it more often than others who are more like endomorphic. So I have full faith in you. I think you can do it, Nate. So, and I'm very happy you're not going to wait a year or two, because people have short memories in this sport. They'd be like, who's that? I don't even remember him. Where'd he turn pro? I don't even remember. So strike while the iron's hot. So man, All right, man. Well, congratulations. I want everyone to follow you on Instagram. It's just Nate Spear, right?
Yep, at Nate
Perfect.
Spear.
You didn't have to get one of those, the official Nate Spears or anything. It's Nate Spear.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's easy one to follow. Check him
no
out.
blue check or anything yet. No.
I don't have a blue badge either. It's okay. So yeah, congratulations, Nate. Well earned. Glad to see you. You're a good guy. You had this coming for a while,
I
and
appreciate that.
always good to see people from this area do well. It's
Yeah, definitely.
always I have a special place in my heart for New Englanders.
Well, I think actually you said something like a day or two out, and you said New England's next pro, and I was like, but
I
hey,
don't like jinxing people, but
yeah,
I saw, I pretty much follow almost everybody, so I know what everyone was looking like.
yeah,
I knew unless you got hit by a car on the way to the venue or something, you were probably it would come down to you and Carlos. I knew it would.
yeah.
Two very different physiques, but both great in your own way. So that's it, man. All right. I want to let everyone know, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, turn notifications on, do all that stuff. Follow Nate Spear at Nate Spear on Instagram. We appreciate you guys watching Ronline Report with new IFBB Pro Nate Spear. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ron.